All right, Nick, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers as a team. Obviously, everyone knows they move off of Preston Smith. We kind of talked about that move a little while ago, but there's a little deeper meaning in that move and some budding stars on this Packers roster that really made the team comfortable with moving off of Smith. We'll get into that in just a minute, but first, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, the Packers moving off of Smith, but the reason behind why they were comfortable moving off of him is there's a budding star in particular on the defensive side of the ball that they are really starting to like. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from Lombardi Ave. It says, when you watch our offense versus our show team and you focus in on some guys, they start jumping out every single day, said Halfley. And if our offense is having a tough time blocking certain guys, or you get a guy who's all of a sudden making a ton of plays on the ball, you start watching them and watching them. I think both of these guys really started to jump out Halfley, then went into more detail about Cox, talking about Brenton Cox Jr., the 2023 pick out of Florida. So there was a string of 2 practices where Cox just looked like he was ready to go, said Halfley. It's really cool to see when guys earn their opportunity, and I think he's a really good example of that. I'm really, really excited for him as well as Mosby. This didn't sound like classic coach speak either. Halfley always speaks with great energy, and his passion for the game is contagious. He sounded genuinely excited to get them out there, highlighting the Packers wouldn't have traded Smith if they didn't believe their young players could fill the void. And I think specifically Brenton Cox Jr. is the guy that is really, really jumping off the page. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts are about these young players. But before we get to you, Packers fans, in the comments section below, this is a Green Bay team. They're doing a lot of good things. I think this is a team set to have some big expectations going forward. But with the Bears coming up this week, this is probably a pretty easy to win game. So let us know in the comment section below. Do you dominate the Bears again? Do the Packers still own the Bears? Or is it going to be a little bit closer than people think? Let us know your thoughts on the final score in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this young rising star for the Packers?
This was a guy in Brenton Cox Jr. who, coming out of school, coming out of his college career, when you look at just his stature and some of his highlight film in the SEC, he looked like a first round pick. He looked like a game breaker, just a destructive force on the edge, pass rusher, run defense, making plays. He looked like a special kind of player. The problem was discipline. The problem was maturity, right? He had been dismissed both from Georgia and the Florida Gators football program, if I remember correctly. And even on his film, there are inconsistencies with discipline and things like that, playing with good discipline technique and all that kind of stuff. So the big question with Cox coming out of college was, look, can he humble himself? Can he finally mature and be a grown up? And look, let's not bury a kid who's 21, 20 being an immature idiot. I was an immature idiot at 20, 21, 22 as well, right? I don't like when people in the media, talking heads, talk about these athletes, and I get it. There's a lot of expectations on them, but they're still 21 years old when they're in college. Let's not bury them yet. Let's give them time to grow up. And the Packers have done that in the second year in his program. This is a guy on the scout team. That's what the show team is, right? You're giving your starting offense a look of what the opposing defense is doing. What Brenton Cox has been spending his entire NFL career doing is lining up, pretending to be somebody else, and having a coach hold up a card of, hey, Cox, this is what you're doing here, right? You're going to pretend to be Aiden Hutchinson. You're going to pretend to be whoever and try and run this scheme and this run thing to get our offense ready to play this upcoming Sunday. We don't care about your performance. Your performance is nothing on Sunday. You only matter helping out the real players, right? That's what being on the scout team is all about. And I know that because I spent a few years on the scout team myself in college. It is a very humbling experience. And the only people that can really get through that process and come out the other side being productive are those that are mature enough and team focused enough. And Brenton Cox, the fact that he's performing well in the show team, to me is the biggest sign yet that he's finally grown up, that he's mature, that he's put his past issues behind him. And if that's the case, the Packers have a legitimate superstar here. I know people were excited about Lucas Van Ness when he was first drafted. He has been, to be totally honest, a bit of a disappointment. I hope he picks it up altogether. He has shown some flashes. He just needs to be more consistent. But if Cox has truly put those issues behind him, and I think he is a player that on paper is twice as good as Lucas Van Ness can ever be, and that's no slight against Van Ness. That's just how good Brenton Cox Jr. can be. I think the Packers have themselves a breakout superstar emerging in this young edge defender.
Yeah, Nick, and I think what you said is completely right here. Discipline problems aside, coming out of college, Cox was supremely talented. And then coming onto a Packers team, how do you gauge if a player has gotten over those, what kind of character flaws they may have had? You stick him behind everybody else. You give him maybe even limited special teams snaps. He hasn't really been on the field all too much, and say, hey, you're a scout team guy, practice squad guy. Let's see what you can do there and literally earn your way up the roster. And this is his second year on this team doing just that. I think that is what we're getting here. This is a guy that made it through the whole first year, barely got any playing time whatsoever. I think I looked at his snaps. He may have had like 6 snaps total, and those were probably on practice or special teams, excuse me. This is a guy who has battled each day in and out through 1.5 seasons in the NFL, and now is finally going to get his time to shine. Supremely talented athlete. I think this was a major, major win for the Green Bay Packers to bring this guy in who had some character concerns but had all the talent in the world. Let him sit and say, hey, we've got a good squad right now, but if we ever have an opportunity and this guy ends up, changing, he works his whatever he has going on out, this could be our next big thing. It's worth taking a flyer on, and now it seems like this move has paid off major for the Green Bay Packers.